Dear viewers, best wishes for the new calendar year 2020. Uh, there are three important areas I'd like to touch upon. One is the corporate results so far for the quarter which has gone by, ended December 2019. Second, the immediate topical event in terms of the budget, which happened on the February 1st. And the third, a kind of a seeming paradox between markets at higher points sequentially in the backdrop of economic growth rate which has been muted and soft. Also integral to that is kind of what people believe to be paradox between the relatively limited number of businesses doing well in the markets compared to the wider markets per se. Taking up on the first point, corporate results so far have been in sync with, in general, what the belief has been at our end. The top line growth has been relatively muted in high single digit or double digit kind. I'm more referring to the businesses that we are invested in, or the businesses that we favor for investment, not all of the businesses or the results. The operating margins in qualitatively sound businesses have actually expanded and expanded at a pretty decent clip. Therefore, operating profits have grown at a pretty handsome rate, upwards of 25% plus in the businesses that we have chosen to be into. The profit before tax, given the fact that the quality of the businesses has further improved, good businesses have tightened the belt, improved the capital efficiency, sweated assets better, cash flows have improved, and therefore we have seen the profit before tax growth for this business is matching those strong double digit kind of profit growth in the operating profits. And the profit after tax, of course, has grown much higher because of the fortuitous tax break that has now been availed. So I would say results for the qualitatively sound and solid businesses are in sync with broadly our viewpoint that these businesses are dealing with relatively softer economy well. Their core top line is still growing. In many cases, the volumes are growing even higher than the sales. Therefore, the pricing environment has remained benign. The operating profits have expanded much better, and profit before tax and capital efficiency also have resonated with that growth, and profit after tax having expanded at a much higher pace given the tax break. So this I would regard it as a pretty solid outcome so far in terms of where economy and the good businesses are headed. Second part, in terms of the budget, in my opinion, I think budget has been well focused and stable and solid, given the paucity of the resources in the hands of the government, and given relatively slower expanding economy. Therefore, resource challenges become greater. Obvious outcome was to be reflected in slightly expanded fiscal deficit, but in given the order of things, that was to be expected and well within the order. But overall path of the prudence and containment of the fiscal deficit within the defined boundaries and keeping the borrowings under check of the government, I would say all have been part of the disciplined management of the overall business of running economy of the that this government is set about so far. Two areas where I think probably changes would have been more favorably received. One was the treatment of the new tax introduced last year in the personal side on in the super tax. I would have thought that in the order of things, in terms of given that we are still an emerging major economy, our tax rates need to be in sync with that situation. The highest tax at about 42.7 and the new other tax of 39 probably could have been brought down to the earlier levels which were introduced in July 2019. There was there was some amount of concern that this rate could have been rationalized. Other one was on the long-term capital gains, and there is a realistic reason why long-term capital gains tax by elongating the holding period could have been brought down to the earlier level of 0. But be it as it may, the budgetary provisions overall have been sound, solid, well intended, in good direction. I would also say dividend distribution tax, which was knocked away, while it will certainly expand the tax liability for the individuals, but I would still say it is a right thing. Though it will expand the outflow for the dividend tax in the hands of the individuals, the logic of abolishing dividend distribution tax is sound, and even if that means increased tax liability for the individuals, that's well within the logic of overall measure, and to that extent I would happily accept that provision, that is a right thing to do. So overall, budget is a continuum of the same sense of fiscal discipline, long-term solidity, building the base, and carving out fiscal space within the overall fiscal imperatives which are in the environment. Third, which is the two seeming paradoxes, one between the growth rate of economy and the market performance. Second, within the markets, the performance of a relatively smaller basket of businesses which are conveniently labeled under quality stocks and the rest of the market. I would touch upon the first one. Economists and the media and many other observers and bystanders typically are in a business of analyzing and doing postmortem of the past into the present, and therefore they are commenting and validly that economic growth rate has been soft, but at the same time probably not adequately mentioning that there are important causal reasons why economic growth rate has slowed down. These causal reasons or the reforms are essential, and therefore these softness of the growth rate of economy is not such a worrisome thing or a negative thing, because it is all building towards a stronger foundation for creating even accelerated superior quantum of growth as well as quality of growth. And to that extent, I would say the commentators are probably more narrating the fact of what has occurred or occurring rather than really contemplating about the future. Markets are, in my opinion, correctly and rightly are judging that the future is looking better on the back of the reforms which have occurred over the last 5 years. This is making current growth rate softer, but it is preparing a base which is solid and strong, which in turn will accelerate the not just the growth rate of economy, but qualitatively the growth rate of the economy will be superior. The two together sets the stage for much superior value creation, and markets are recognizing this truth and bringing that future that they are judging, in contrast of the past and the present that the economists and media are commenting upon. They are bringing that future into the present, discounting back to the present and reflecting into the market prices. So I would say this contrast may exist in the minds of many people, but markets probably, in my opinion, are being very prescient and well judging as far as the turn of events are concerned. This is not to say that markets are never wrong. Markets are spectacularly wrong often enough. But if for whatever it is worth, if I have to give any opinion as far as behavior of the markets today is concerned, I think markets are probably much wiser about it than many of the other commentators are. The second is the kind of a paradoxical gap between what popularly has been in fashion of late to describe as a performance of the quality stocks and the rest of the market, and within the quality stocks, basically the large cap, front loaded kind of large businesses. Again, in my opinion, I think these labels, much like the paradox of the market performance and the GDP, probably is not entirely revealing the picture by just looking at the numbers. Equally, these label about the performance of the quality basket and especially the bigger and larger ones is somewhat misplaced. Markets are basically paying a premium for recognizing the fact that many of the reforms like GST, demonetization, Real Estate Regulation Act, the Insolvency Bankruptcy Act, not to forget the cleanup of the banks and the finance firm balance sheets. All these reforms are basically separating good from the bad and the bad from the ugly. All that is while at a micro level, many of the poor businesses or the poor managements would be the intended victims of what is happening in the market. But actually, that is raising the available opportunity and the bar for the good and strong businesses, which in turn will reflect into the not just the improvement in the rate of growth of the cash flows for these businesses, but even the durability and the longevity of those cash flows. Not to forget the quality of the cash flow in terms of the capital efficiency is concerned. So markets have been building that relatively more complex equation much more clearly, rather than very simplistic notion of just the some quality businesses rising or large cap rising, these kind of narrow descriptions which have been kind of in offing for some while. So I would trust in the wisdom and the judgment of the market as it stands today, rather than really worry about these labels. And to that extent, I believe the future of the economy looks in a much better situation. There are some early indicators already that the economic situation is turning up and up for stronger kind of movement. These are early signals, but I would draw confidence and courage from these early indicators that things are actually on ground now beginning to kind of improve. Early incipient ones, but important ones. And the assessment is that the economic growth rate will recover, will actually accelerate thereafter. The quality of the growth rate, as I mentioned earlier, is actually getting better and better, along with the longevity and durability of growth acquiring a stronger age on the back of the reforms and stronger foundation. In my opinion, the coming period, a long period of time, would reflect one of the best periods for the Indian economy, in turn for the markets, in turn the performance of quality businesses and compliant ones, and in turn in their performance in the marketplace. All of them, to my mind, reflect a very strong and logical connect. With that, I would say bye for now.